Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sarah Green, live on Clear Source Radio with Creating Connection. I broadcast every Wednesday at noon from Dallas, Fort Worth, so we're in the Central Time Zone. You can catch replays on the Clear Source app. We always have all of the shows with all of the different hosts on a loop, so if you miss a show, you can pick it up later. If you have to log off or tune out for a little bit, you can tune back in later and check with Clear Source and catch a rebroadcast. You can also check YouTube. You can Google Heartlight Services on YouTube and find my YouTube channel. And within a week or two of all of the shows being broadcast, there will be a replay available for you guys. So I appreciate everyone that's tuned in today. I know we have a lot of listenership happening out there. With the topic that we have. It's something that is near and dear and close to my heart, that has touched and affected my family, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. I wanted to start a little bit talking about how we're in Mercury retrograde, which is a place where everybody just goes, oh gosh. And for those of you who don't know what that is, Mercury retrograde is an astrological thing that happens where it appears that the planet of Mercury is going backwards in its rotation. It's obviously not, because planets don't go backwards, but it appears that it is. And during that time, it's very common to have electronic, automobile, phone, computer, all kinds of problems with technology, transportation, and our communication. So our words, a lot of misunderstandings are possible. You might just be feeling a little off kilter. So just know that that's kind of what's going on. And, you know, good advice as always for Mercury retrograde is to just kind of hang out. Don't sign any contracts. Don't make any big decisions. Anything that you do now, if you kind of move forward with anything big, a lot of times you'll have to redo that. And that doesn't mean don't do your life. It just means kind of sit still, take a breath, take a minute. It's very hard for me. I have a lot of work things brewing right now, and I know that what I have to do right now is just to kind of hang out and be patient and not start any new projects. And I'm a project girl, but I'm having to do that. So that's just kind of my little tidbit. I know that I've been hearing a lot from clients about some frustrations that are going on. And just remember that Mercury is retrograde. And just sit tight. We'll be through it on the 22nd, and we'll be ready to rock and roll and move forward. Okay. Also, I wanted to just remind everybody that my new book is out, Heal Your Feelings. It's the Indigo Aztec method of healing for children that I developed in my office. I say it's for children, but the method really is for everyone. But the workbook is geared towards children. You can buy it on my website at heartlightservices.com. You can also buy it on Amazon if you just Google or type in the search bar, Heal Your Feelings. You can also Google the book. It's been out for a couple of weeks now. It's doing better than I'd hoped. I'm super excited about this project and the difference and the change it can make in the lives of our children. And I appreciate all the support that I've gotten so far on that project. So, speaking of books, who I have for you today is a woman by the name of Jennifer Ortiz. She is not only just a super fabulous person, but she's also my cousin. We were raised 2 years apart and are more like sisters than cousins. Her mom took care of me when I was a child growing up, and we're very, very close. And she has released a new book today. I'm telling everybody to get their Kleenex out because I'm probably going to need mine too. But she's released a new book. It hasn't gone live yet, and I'll have her give you all the information on the dates. But it is the story of her life as the mother of a pediatric stroke victim. Her son Jude had a stroke in utero, which yes, can happen, and was born with some special needs and some delays, and it started kind of a whole journey for them especially, and then rippled out through their family and evolved into her daughter starting a charity, and there were a lot of life lessons. So through that process, Jennifer blogged and wrote really honestly and with a lot of raw emotion about her experience. And we lost Jude a few months ago, and it was very, very hard. But a book has come out of it, and he brought a lot of light to the world. And so I just want to introduce Jennifer and say hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Thanks for calling in today and sharing this with us. You know, it's funny, so many people in our family have books coming out right now. It's like, what's going on? It's like we're the writers, you know.
I know, it's crazy.
But I just kind of want to, because, you know, most people aren't even aware that children can have strokes, and even more so most people are not aware that children can have strokes in utero, which is, what happened with Jude. So just kind of go back to the beginning, the pregnancy. I know this was a second marriage for you, and you were really excited about this baby and having this, bringing this child into your family, and just kind of take us back to the beginning and kind of start telling us the story.
Yeah, it was my second marriage, and my husband was married before, and they actually lost 5 children through miscarriages, so it was very unfortunate. And whenever I became pregnant, he was very excited. We both were. And whenever we went in for our level 2 sonogram, the doctor told us that we were having a little boy, and my husband was ecstatic. And in the next sentence, the doctor told us that his brain ventricles were slightly increased, and he didn't think there was any issue with it, but he wanted to do an in utero MRI just to be sure. Okay. Well, the in utero MRI unfortunately showed that Jude had suffered a massive bilateral stroke, and it was in the area that our cells are distributed, so it could have lasting effects.
Okay.
And we went and saw many, many specialists before we made the decision to give Jude a chance. And one particular neurologist, who was fabulous, told us that strokes can cause, massive disabilities, because they can cause dyslexia or just some other behavioral issues as well, or there could be nothing wrong. That babies' brains have a way of reconnecting or rerouting itself. So based on that, we figured that we needed to give Jude a chance.
Okay.
And
because you guys were, there was, terminating the pregnancy was an option, and that was up in the air, correct?
It was. I definitely believe in life, but I also believe in quality versus quantity. And if the baby I knew was going to be born only to suffer, then we would have made the decision to terminate. But of course, I'm very glad that we made the decision to have him. So after that in utero MRI I mentioned, I started blogging, and one of the reasons why I did that was because I had blessed enough to have lots of family and friends that are concerned about me and my family, and they were anxious for updates, and this was a way for me to update everybody at once. And also, I knew that there were probably families out there like mine that were going through something like this, and I wanted to just put raw, complete honesty out there about this stroke and education, so people would understand that their feelings and their emotions, their fears, their everything was perfectly normal. And so I really followed that blog for, Jude's entire life, and kept putting in entries through everything that we went through with him.
And what's the name? What's the address for the blog, just in case anybody wants to go back and read it?
Right. It's the Diary of a Baby in a Stroke, and it is at C as in Charlie, Jen, Jen, go.blogspot.com.
Okay.
But if you just go in and type in Jude, the Diary of a Baby in a Stroke, you can find it.
Right. Because you have a pretty big readership. People started really following it, and you got kind of involved in the world of, pediatric stroke awareness and all of the things surrounding that.
Yeah, absolutely. The way we found out that Jude, the stroke had caused massive damage was at 3 months old, Jude had a seizure. Before that, we thought he was perfectly healthy. He was born, everything looked great, and he just started opening and closing his mouth over and over and over again. And you probably remember I brought him over to your house and said, is this normal? And, at first we thought it was, and then I raced him to the hospital, and they knew immediately he was having seizures. And so that's really where our journey began as far as taking care of a child that had suffered a stroke. And it really kind of amazes me as the years passed on how many times we would hear, even in a medical facility, I didn't know children could have strokes. And pediatric strokes and in utero strokes are actually one of the top leading causes of death in the United States, and also one of the top causes of disabilities in children.
Wow.
It's just unfortunately there's not a lot that they can do sometimes, and so it's really just a wait and see. But if you have a child that their face is slouching, their arms going numb, their speech is getting slurred, they're dizzy, they may have headaches or an onset of a fever or seizure, in any of those instances, you can always, if you go into an ER, ask a doctor, hey, I want you to check for a stroke. And we've actually told a child that before. One of our friends took their daughter in, and she was not feeling well. And I told them, have the doctor check, and sure enough, that's what it was.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I mean, that just blows my mind because, you think strokes are something that happen to elderly people. That's what happen. It's an end-of-life thing or whatever. I mean, it doesn't blow my mind now because it's part of my reality, but I remember when all of this was going on in the beginning, it was just like, what? A child? Like, with their little brain, that this can happen too, but it can. So
it certainly can. And we had a neurosurgeon actually tell us that a baby's brain is very friable, that it's just very fragile, and it doesn't take much for a burst or a blood clot or anything like that to happen. It's just most children are, we see with our kids now, they're resilient. They have a way of overcoming it, even if, like I said, the brain has to find a way to reconnect itself. But in Jude's situation, unfortunately, it was just in an area of the brain that was extremely critical at that time point.
Right. And then he had an additional diagnosis of schizencephaly, correct? And some other things along
yes,
with
he had
that?
bilateral schizencephaly, which is actual, grooves in the brain. You can look up the definition of it, which was a cause of the stroke. He had a small cerebellum, and he had a few other issues that actually attacked his brain from that, second of loss of oxygen. So the parts of his brain that didn't form correctly basically filled in with fluid, but it's not like hydrocephaly where they can drain the fluid, because in Jude's circumstance, if you drained it, it would just fill back up again because there just wasn't anything there.
Okay, so talk about, you said he had a stroke at 3 months, and then, obviously, your life changes.
Yeah.
And I know, your husband, Mike stayed home and took care of him. And I remember he had some feeding issues as an infant. And so kind of talk about those initial early struggles,
Yeah, I mean, whenever you have a child that's diagnosed with something catastrophic, your life changes instantly. And you can't take a baby that has seizures to daycare. So especially the type of seizures that Jude had. Jude could suffer up to 70 seizures a day before we got them under control. So my husband basically had to walk out of work because I was the one that carried the health insurance. And that was difficult. It's hard to stay home with children sometimes, but especially if they have, severe medical needs like Jude did. And, of course, we loved being with him, but it was very trying for my husband. And
you guys were trying to figure out medication, and you were trying to find medications that, worked for him, but weren't going to poison him, and with the side effects and all of that. And that was a huge, and then that you could afford, that was, I remember that being a huge struggle.
Yeah, unfortunately, in my opinion, I think that we have a pharmaceutical problem in America with being able to provide for families that truly need medications. Fortunately for us, after 2 years, Jude did qualify for what's called the Medically Dependent Children Program in the state of Texas, where they stepped up and paid what we could not. When you're dealing with seizure medications that can cost upwards of $600 a piece, it can become quite expensive.
Right.
Jude was also, in and out of hospitals. But my husband started noticing Jude was having feeding difficulties. He would turn away from the bottle. He would choke on the formula, and lots of crying and issues like that. So on his second birthday, and that's whenever he ended up qualifying for this program, Jude suddenly became very, very pale. He started running a very high fever, and I knew something was wrong, one of those mommy instincts. And I ended up actually calling 911, and we were very lucky that we did. Whenever the paramedics arrived, Jude's oxygen level was at 71, which is very low, and he had a very fast heart rate. So they stabilized him in the ambulance and got him to a hospital in Dallas, who told us that Jude was aspirating on all of his liquids. Unfortunately, the stroke had affected the midline of his body to where Jude could not eat like we do. And so they had to place what's called a G button in his tummy, which is where he ate, until he started vomiting later in life, and then they turned it into a GJ tube, which had his formula going into his intestine and, his medicines going into his tummy to be broken down.
Okay.
But despite all of this and how difficult it sounds, Jude was a very happy baby and was always smiling.
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't really talk, but there were certain, sounds that he could make, and we knew what they meant.
Mm-hmm.
And Jude was very much a stroke victim. He knew what was going on. He knew who we were. If you asked him, where's Mommy or where's Sissy, he would always look around the room until he found us and then smile real big at us.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of our goal was to get Jude's pain and everything under control because he did understand what was happening to him.
Mm-hmm. 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 And then as all that was happening, you're dealing with that, and you're dealing with feeding issues, and you're dealing with learning about G-tubes and all of the things that nobody wants to have to deal with. And you're in and out of hospitals, and you're doing all that. Then Emily, your oldest daughter, your only daughter, Emily, started her charity, Emily's Smile Boxes. So, because that was a beautiful thing, I think, that, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk about Jude's story is, as you know, and anybody that came to his services know, is the thing that struck me the most was how, yes, this is tragic, and yes, this was sad, and all, this thing that happened to Jude, but so many people learned so many beautiful things from him, and the Emily's Smile Boxes, the charity that came out of that, is another gorgeous thing that came out of, your choice to bring him here and out of his life. So talk to me about Smile Boxes and how that came about and how old Emily was and what it's developed into.
Emily was 10 years old,
mm-hmm.
and we were at the hospital with Jude. Mm-hmm. And whenever she describes it to you, it definitely brings a tear, because she says that, we went home and the house was dark, and we set her down and we talked to her, and she realized that life was never going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but then literally within an hour, she was watching a program on boxes being sent to the military overseas. And she told me, Mommy, I would like to do something like that for the kids in the hospitals. And she said that she was, very bored and very sad sitting at the hospital with Jude. And so I told her that I would be more than happy to help her, let me know what she wanted to put in them. And she started with 12 boxes that she filled with activities for kids in the hospital and their siblings, mm-hmm. and took them up there, to where Jude was at, and gave them to the child life specialist, and they loved them. So after that, Emily started asking our family for donations, and then she started branching out, and it really just kind of came its own, monster, if you want to say. I mean, they're just, all these hospitals were requesting them. People were requesting them all over the nation, and so Emily's Small Boxes was born, mm-hmm. and Emily started holding parties mm-hmm. Where people would put together 300 to 400 boxes at a time, mm-hmm. and so to date, she sent over 15,000 boxes out all over the United States, into Canada, and even into England and Africa.
And what year did that start, the Smile Boxes?
2010, I believe.
Okay, so just in 6 years, we've done 15,000 boxes. So, yes. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And then for her, I believe it was her third anniversary, Emily always had this dream in mind of doing a pediatric stroke 5K for her brother. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of pushed it off every year because I had a lot going on. But Emily finally talked me into it. And actually this year will be her fourth annual pediatric stroke 5K on September 24th at the Ranch of Lonesome Dove. And it is being advertised on active.com. You can just type in Emily's Smile Boxes.
Okay.
And after the 5K, we're actually putting together 300 boxes to benefit the local pediatric hospitals. And then we have a full day of lots of fun for the kids that participate. And it's just a wonderful event that really encourages community service and teaching kids what's really important in life.
It's a great event. And so if anybody's local, or even, not that local, but, wants to make a day trip, Emily's Smile Boxes has a website. It's emilysmileboxes.com. I don't think that my children and I have missed an event. I think we've been to every one. Even with all of my travel I did last year, I think we hit every one. I haven't missed one. And we will be there this year. It is just really, really cool. It's a fun day. My kids look forward to it every year. I have taken foster kids. I have taken, friends of friends' kids with me. And it's really, they have so much fun, and they put the boxes together, and there's the 5K in the morning, and then there's the barbecue. You guys do a big barbecue lunch, and there's music, and there's a balloon pop, and that's always fun because there's always, somebody got an airplane ride. That was one of the prizes that was donated. I've donated a couple of books, some of my workbooks. We've got some really neat stuff that you guys do to kind of raise money for small boxes, and it's a great, it's a blast of a day. It really is. They do a good job out there too at Lonesome Dove. So I would encourage anybody that's local or within driving distance to make a day out of it and bring your family out, because it's not just a charity event or whatever. It's like a big birthday party is what it feels like to me. We always have a great day. Yeah. Okay. And so Emily did the small box thing, and the small boxes, you guys have given me those. I have given them to my CPS workers. They've gone to kids that have come into foster care. They're really, really cool. There's a bunch of neat things in them, activities, things like that. And they really do make a difference. I've heard, because I know I've dropped them off for you before at some of the hospitals, and they have an impact. How much does it cost per box for you guys to ship out a box?
To fill the box, we've gotten the cost down to about $5 a box now, which is good. The shipment really depends on where we're shipping them off to. It is our largest expense to ship them out, but it's something that we did not want to stop. It was very important to Emily to make sure that if somebody requested them, that she send the box to that child and their siblings, no matter where they were. But now, of course, whenever we drop them at the local children's hospitals, whenever we make a large batch of them, we generally just ask for volunteers to go drop them off, and we don't have to worry about shipping issues.
Yeah. Well, and I know that it's just such a really cool thing. And also, too, you guys have a Facebook page, right? Emily Small Boxes has a Facebook page, and there's pictures on there of some of the kids that have gotten boxes and things like that. So it's just a super, super cool event and a really neat charity. And you're a nonprofit. So if anybody's looking to donate, I'm going to go ahead and plug it for you. If anybody's looking to donate, it is tax deductible. It's a charitable contribution. And, every $5 you donate sends a box or makes a box for a child that's in need. So just kind of remember that as you're putting your donation dollars to the side where you're going to spend your money or whatever, that this is a worthwhile place to do it. You also have like scout groups, and some kids do birthday parties and things like that with the small boxes, right?
Yes, that's one of the great things that's come about is we have had quite a few kids, actually, that have had birthday parties. And generally what they'll do is we send them a list of where to get the box and where to get the fillers, and we'll normally buy the postcards. And what the moms normally do is they'll buy like 25 boxes and 25 labels, and we'll send them 25 postcards, and then they ask each child to bring enough supplies to fill 1 or 2 boxes in lieu of birthday presents. And so the kids all get together and put these boxes together, and then they generally take a little road trip down the hospital and drop it off for their birthday. And that's been a huge thing. We also have several schools that do 100 days of school. They do 100 Emily Small Boxes, and so the kids collect items several weeks before. And then if Emily's local, she can actually come out and talk to the school about the benefits of community service and how she got involved with Emily Small Boxes. If not, she can send like a PowerPoint for the school to show during an assembly. And then all the kids put the boxes together, and either the teachers or the student council go and drop the boxes off to whatever hospital they want them dropped off at.
And see, this is another example, and Clear Source, their radio station, is really about, what their tagline is people that inspire people. And what, Emily and you and your family, I know you hate it when people do this, but you are inspirational. And with the work that I do with families, one of my biggest focuses is turning challenges into opportunities. And this is a beautiful example of what that looks like. What taking a challenge, a huge insurmountable challenge, and the kind of challenge where, I know people say to you, I could never do that. I could never. Well, you could, because you don't have a choice, and you get in there and you do it. But this is where you turn a challenge into an opportunity. And so the challenge of having a child with special needs and having a child that required the kinds of things that Jude required, it became an opportunity for Emily and because I know you help her, and Mike helps, and to be an opportunity to serve others. And that is a gorgeous, gorgeous thing. And so I think my thing that I want to say to people that are listening today is, when you have a challenge, what you think is a challenge in your life, maybe take a minute to sit in gratitude and think about how you can turn your challenge into an opportunity, because there's always a way. There's always a way.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right. And whenever you said, I know you don't like people to say this, but Emily is definitely one that shies away from any type of accolades, even though, of course, she's received, awards and been recipient of scholarships all over for her community service work. But she doesn't like people to look at her with sympathy. And Emily has, of course, a goal to be Miss Teen USA, and one of the things that she does not like to do is to try to get any type of sympathy from the judges or anybody looking at her based off her situation, because she looked at, this is what the cards were dealt to her, and this is what she needed to deal with, and she wanted to do it in a way that was positive and to have a positive impact on society versus sympathy.
Right. And so let's get real honest, I think, because this is important, and this is something that, I watch from a side, and we all deal with, because it's super, part of being human. When you have a child like Jude, and Jude was bedbound or wheelchair bound, it was hard to leave the house with him. He was towards the end, he was on oxygen, he had feeding tubes, he had wires, he looked different. I mean, he was different. What are some of the things that people would say that were not helpful? And what are ways that people who are dealing with, a mom that's in the situation that you guys were in, what's not helpful and what is?
Oh, good question. One of the things that I always remind myself of, especially since, Jude passed away, is that people want to try to help you. And they want to, they can't relate to the situation, so they want to do anything that they possibly can to try to heal your pain. And so I try to remind myself that the things that people say are out of, kindness and coming from a place of good, even if they don't help me. But some of the things that I heard that did not help were, everything happens for a reason, God won't give you any more than you can handle, Jude's with Jesus now, things like that. And even though I am religious and I do believe that Jude is in heaven and with my mother, at that point in time, it just didn't help. And when people ask me, how are you doing? Well, I just lost my child. How do you think I'm doing? And I understand that he was sick, and people think that makes it easier. That's one thing that I kept hearing was, well, you knew he was going to pass away, right? Yeah, well, that doesn't help.
Yeah.
My heart is broken. The level of care that we gave Jude was consistent. It had to be 24/7, either with nurses or with us. And whenever that goes away and it just stops and you've got nothing and it's just silence and you're missing your child, it's difficult. And so really I needed people to just be there. And if I needed to talk, then I would talk and, to help. And I think one of the things, especially with children like Jude, is that we can say those things. We can say, I couldn't do it. Yes, you could if it was your child, and you would. At least most people I know would. But instead of saying, I guess, maybe doing, hey, come help with the laundry or drop off dinner one night for these families. If they're in the hospital, stop by and drop them off a pizza or see if you can pick them up some toothpaste because you run out of things quickly in the hospitals. Gas cards, food cards are wonderful for families like this. We were in the hospital pretty consistently, and sometimes up to 2 to 3 weeks, and it gets tiring. And sometimes we need breaks and need people to sit with, our children while we run downstairs and just have a breather. So there's lots of things I think that people can do.
Well, because we're in the South, so it's like we just bring a casserole. So
perfect. Yes.
Yeah, you just bring a casserole.
Yeah, lasagna. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that stuff, definitely helps. Anything helps, even kind words, but, and truly listening. And I felt like that was a bit of therapy for me through my blog, was that whenever I would write it, people would really read it and take it in and hear my emotion and hear my sadness or my stress or my desperation at that time period and would react to it. And And that makes somebody feel good. It makes you feel like they truly care and that they get it and they get what you're going through and what your child's going through.
Yeah, so the writing, was very therapeutic. And it's, you and I both have that in common in that we live our lives out loud, with, we both blog and we both write about our personal lives. And it opens you up, though, when you do that to criticism. And I know, and I'm just going to call it like it is, there were some a-holes out there, just like there are in my case, that, sit back in judgment, and I, would make comments, and it was just like, wow, you're going to be the person that's going to say something crappy to a mother of a dying child? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I've had some interesting ones. I do put my life out there, and I did put Jude's out there to try to help other people and help our family. And I had to accept what was given to me. I had a couple of people tell me, well, I shouldn't have had a baby at 35 anyway. And I had the best one, I think, was a lady that told me that I was paying for my ancestors' sins, that they had done something terrible in their past. And anyway, you just kind of have to blow things like that off, I think, and just take in the positive versus the negative. And I look at all the people that Jude touched. With his suffering, he taught people to be grateful for what they have, to be grateful for their healthy children, their own lives. People had emailed me that they were inspired to exercise and they were inspired to quit smoking and to just, all these positive impacts that he made, and he never spoke one word.
Well, I know I started running, and now I'm just going to be honest, I took July and August off because it was really hot and I was moving and all of that, but I did, and I still, I'll get out there and I'll run, and it's like, I'm doing this great thing for myself, and when it starts to get hard, I'm like, oh wait, but I can breathe and I can run.
Right.
And so he's been a big motivator for me just to get out there and put my shoes on and move my body because I can,
right?
Because I can. And for me, and the gratitude of my kids, and I somehow or another, my little guy that we adopted from foster care came with a lot of issues, and for some reason, he's okay, and he shouldn't have been. And, that gratitude, I think that we often get caught up in our lives, and we don't take our moments to really look around us and be grateful for everything that we have. And that is a huge thing, I think, that Jude kind of taught people, is just that, and to be present in the moment. Just to be present in the moment. And, but I did bring up the part about people, I wanted to talk about people being judgmental from the outside, about your blog when you write and when you release books and things like that, because that's a true thing that happens, it's like, it's part of it. And that when you go through crises like that, people say dumb stuff.
Right.
They just do. People say dumb stuff. And so, like, if there's, I think, one of the things I know from talking to other moms that have experienced loss is if for whatever, just don't say everything happens for a reason or God has a plan. Just don't say those two things. So if you hear nothing else out of this hour-long show, if somebody's going through a horrible thing in their lives, don't say those two things. Is there a third? Should we add a third?
God won't give you more than you can handle, because trust me, I've probably had more than I can handle. I do believe that God helps you walk, though, and helps you walk the path with what you've been given. But nowhere in the Bible does it say He won't give you more than you can handle, because I've definitely felt like breaking, especially after we lost Jude. And again, I know that people definitely mean well, and so I just normally smile and thank them for their nice comment. And understand that they just don't understand, and I don't want them to. I don't want them to be in a situation where they have a child that suffers, or have to go through child loss.
Right.
I can't. There is really no other pain that I have been through in my life that is comparable to losing Jude.
And you've had a rough go. I mean, your life has not been easy. You lost your mom. It's her birthday today, so happy birthday, Aunt Candace.
Yes.
You lost your mom at a young age, and you had a rough go. So you have not had an easy road to hoe by any stretch of the imagination, and yet you continue. And this fascinates me too. People like you that are so extraordinarily resilient and able to continually put one foot in front of the other and rise and be positive, and aren't and where that comes from, where that inner resiliency and that ability to show up even when life is just beating you with a hammer. Your family, you and Mike and Emily have done that, throughout this and continue to, you're walking now the path of a family. Emily lost her brother and you and Mike lost your child, and you continue to put one foot in front of the other. And so God did give you more than you could handle. Just the fact that you're not dead from it doesn't mean that it's not.
Right. Yeah. And I look back over the last 8 years, and I am definitely proud, and I think Jude would be proud that we have continued to move forward. It has taken a very physical toll on us. We are tired. Our hair is gray. We've gained some weight, things like that. But if that's the only lasting effect that comes out of this, then I think that we've held up pretty well. And yes, my life has been very difficult, but, I believe that God gives us two choices. We can either decide to take a path towards, addiction and just give up and all this other stuff and blame it on our past, or we can move forward and we can try to help others. And what better way to honor Jude than to help others? Right. And that's one of the reasons why, the book that's coming out, The Diary of a Baby in a Stroke, is basically, a culmination of the blogs over the last year. And, I had reservations about actually publishing it because I didn't want to do anything that would actually be a monetary gain because of losing my child. But stepping back and realizing that this is just Jude's arm extending again to other people that may not have known about my blog that can read this and say, wow, I can relate. And to some of my words, like, parents of special needs children feel like they have to be superheroes, and we're not superheroes. It's okay for us to say we're tired, and it's okay to say that we need some help. And for people to read that and to understand, hey, I'm patting you on your back here. It's okay to say, today I just can't cook dinner, or today I can't clean the dishes. Today I need somebody to come help me.
And to ask for that help, and for the people around them to be aware that, of what it's like, and to take a minute and to go help. And, not that I've had anything comparable in my life to this, but I have had some, 2012 was a really shitty year. Excuse my French. Sorry. But it was. And one thing that I found, and I'm wondering if you found this too, when you go through a tragedy, when you're dealing with something really, really crummy, it's amazing the way people show up. And it's not usually who you think it's going to be.
Yeah, it's, yeah. I can't even say enough of how much people helped us. Whenever you're at your just very lowest point, and we were trying to figure out how in the world are we going to bathe Jude? He's getting bigger. And when people step in and say, hey, we know you haven't, had any help, let us help you get a roll-in shower. Let us enclose this room so we can, things like that, or just, after Jude passed away, I was sitting in his room, packing all of his items and his clothes, which is very difficult. And without a phone call, without anything, my best friend Gina shows up on my porch with her little smile and says, I'm here to help. And really just people come out of the woodwork. At his memorial, I had people I hadn't seen in 20 plus years that I went to high school with, and many of them men that had read my blog on a daily basis, and I had no idea, and that showed up, and that were crying and hugging me and saying, I just want to let you know, thank you, because I have an appreciation of my life, and I just wanted to be here to see him. And that was touching. But, and finding the right doctors, too. I can't say enough about Jude's doctors. Dr. Riala in Plano and Dr. Levy in Fort Worth are two fabulous individuals who treated him like their own.
And, and you had, the nurses that Jude had blessed our entire family. They blessed Jude. They blessed you guys. Y'all just...
Yes, that was actually my next conversation, was that we had a nurse, Charlotte, who came in when Jude was 2 years old and basically took over his care and his scheduling and was the most phenomenal person that I have ever met. She loved Jude like he was her son. And if it wasn't for her, I know that we took very good care of Jude, but Jude his life would not have been extended as far as it had without her. And then Alan, sweet Alan, who would come on the weekends and was his weekend nurse and would sit and read the Bible to him every day and sing SpongeBob SquarePants, and who still shows up on my doorstep just to say hello. And I mean, they were our family and still are our family, and we were very lucky to have them.
And let's talk about, when we talk about nursing and Nurse Allen, Nurse Allen, we love Nurse Allen. Let's talk about the struggle that you had, because it was mind-blowing to me what you went through for your nursing. Just talk about, Jude's like physical state and the reality of what the day-to-day care was. And then, the state would deny your nursing. The insurance would deny your nursing.
The nursing situation actually landed me in therapy. But, and by the way, guys, it's okay to go to therapy. But Jude we had very good primary health insurance. My husband actually works for the Dallas Cowboys, and the plan that they provide us is phenomenal.
He was able to go back to work right after you guys got, realized.
Yes, once we got Charlotte, my husband went back to work, yes, and we had phenomenal health care. But backed up to the health care is we had the medically dependent children program that I told you about, and that services ran through Medicaid. About once every 6 months, we had to battle either the primary health insurance or Medicaid to keep Jude's nursing. And this would entail a lot of time and work on my part as far as contacting all of Jude's doctors, getting letters of necessity, making phone calls, scheduling hearings, appealing the cases. It was just a nightmare. And I really believe that the reason why this happens, and they send out these nursing denials, is because one, or let's say 2 out of every 5 people that they send it to are going to give up and not fight. But I knew that Jude's care was primary, and he needed the absolute best care there was out there. And so I took my time each time to fight. Well, the last time that we had to fight was in February 2015, whenever Jude was coming home on hospice. We had made the decision after watching a poor child code across the hall that we did not want to just subject Jude to these horrible invasive procedures that would probably ultimately fail. And so Jude came home, and he was on oxygen 24/7. He was on a GJ tube, which is what fed him. He had to be suctioned 60 to 70 times a day. He was incontinent. He couldn't walk. He couldn't talk, but he still smiled. He had breathing treatments every 4 hours.
And he was on hospice, right?
Yes.
He was on hospice.
Had seizure medications, narcotics, morphine for the pain. And they still denied him, saying that he had no medical necessity. And at this point was whenever Mom here just couldn't do it anymore. I was exhausted. I was losing my child. And it was hospice that stepped in and said, this isn't right. And so they started fighting for us, sent a 5-page summation of Jude's necessity, along with all the letters that I had gathered, and basically told them, if you do this again, we're going to have a problem. And so they approved Jude's hours. And I never had a problem with it after that. And that the head, RN that we were dealing with hospice said that there was one other pediatric case that she had dealt with that was as serious as Jude's, and she could not believe that we kept having to fight. So that's another part of the medical system that I wish would change. I really don't know the answer for it, except for maybe that if you are admitted into any type of program, that they have to see the child in person. And if it is as serious as something like Jude's, then there's really no way that they're going to be bumped off it, unless for some reason, you lose the child. But
can we also just bring this up too, because I'm sure there's some person out there that says, oh well, yeah, they had full-time nursing, that's great, they were lucky and blah 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 blah. It's not, because you guys had people in your house all the time. You couldn't be a family. You didn't have privacy. You couldn't walk around in your underwear and the other things that other people take for granted, because you always had, even though your nurses felt like family, I know, you always have other people in your home.
Yeah, we did always have people in our home, and they were our family, and thank goodness for them, because Jude did not sleep, and we did not have a nurse at night until that same date in February 2015. So we went years without sleep and having to work full time during the day. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I was so grateful for them. I think whenever, we had them and we ended up getting our night nurse, Candace, that I just wasn't going to complain. It was hard, but I just, thank goodness that we could actually go in and get some sleep. So, and this is all stuff that I've definitely written about in the book, and mm-hmm. hopefully, people will enjoy it. And, while I'm thinking about it, the book does not release until February 1st. It's being distributed by Ingram out to the major bookstores. Mm-hmm. And being published by Clovercroft, so we were very blessed by them. Mm-hmm. But I will have several hundred copies that they are going to allow me to pre-release at the Emily Smallbox event in September that we talked about.
Okay.
So,
okay. All right, so it's not, your official release date isn't until February 1st.
Yes, and there's actually a website called diaryofbabystroke.com, and mm-hmm. it will have the release date on there and any events that will be coming up that we will be attending, and if people would like to meet our family.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I know that, it's been a long, it was a road,
Yeah.
It was a road. It still is a road. You're not ever going to be, this will never be okay, and it will never be, it just, I think, what they say, the old adage, I guess, will get easier. Is that what they say in your grief support group,
Yeah, one of the things that, and I have been, unfortunately, we've discussed, I've been through death many times. Mm-hmm. I've lost my mom and my grandparents that raised me from 14, and I had a boyfriend that died, and I do know that the hole that's in the pit of your stomach after you lose somebody, that only time begins to fill that hole. But in Jude's situation, if you know somebody that's lost a child around you and you're not sure what to say, the only thing I can tell you is that we don't, parents that lose children don't expect you to have the right words or to say really anything at all. Just a hug helps. And the understanding that, hey, it's been 4 or 5 months, but it's still fresh to us, and it probably will be for a very long time. And no, it's not any better because he was sick, and no, it's not any better because I wrote the blog. And to just understand that, these parents have good days and bad days too. There's some mm-hmm. days that I show up at work and my coworker just knows it's a bad day. Mm-hmm. She didn't sleep very well last night, so they just kind of give me a hug and walk on. Mm-hmm. But, I think just some understanding if you're around people that are going through pretty severe grief is very helpful.
And what are some of the things, as we kind of finish up and wrap up, what are some of the things that, and you don't have to answer this, but, if you want to, feel free, or you can do half of it and not the other half. But what are some of the things as you went through this experience of having, a special needs child and then losing your child? What are some of the things that you think that you and your family did that were good and that were helpful? And what were some of the things, if you were to go back and look at it again, like to somebody coming into this new, maybe that has the same diagnosis, or they're kind of walking into this, if you could go tell them, hey, I did this and it didn't work so great, and I wish I had done it differently, what would that advice be?
Oh, goodness. As far as the things that were helpful, I think one big thing is I've always still felt a responsibility to attend functions outside of our house, weddings, birthdays, things like that, and just stepping up and saying, what, I just can't. I can't do it. I don't mean to hurt your feelings. I don't mean to not be there for you, but I've just got to take care of myself and my family right now. Mm-hmm. And to realize that it's okay to do that. And I guess as far as learning from things, Jude was probably about 2 years old before I realized, hey, I have a voice, and I'm his medical advocate, and it's okay to tell a doctor, I don't agree with you. And, Jude had a case of pneumonia where we went to a different hospital, and I knew that Jude had aspiration pneumonia. I knew that it was just not presenting on the x-ray yet, and the doctor was trying to send him home, and for me to stand up and say, you're making a mistake. And sure enough, he was sent home and wound up riding via ambulance the next day trying to get him stabilized. So I think, and not, the medical community is most definitely there to help you, but it's okay to tell somebody, I think we need to do an extra check here. And to, just be organized is another thing too. Nurse Charlotte was fabulous with making sure everything was written down and the schedules, and that way we were all on the same plate. The more organized that you can be, the better your life flows, especially with somebody with so many needs.
Okay. And, so what I'm hearing you say on both levels is that, one thing that you think was good was being an advocate for your family and yourself and your own needs and what you could do and what you couldn't, and showing up when you could and not showing up when you couldn't, and being okay with that,
Right.
And then that you wish that you had become a more vocal advocate for Jude maybe earlier on.
Yes, yeah, probably so, to be earlier on and to learn to shelter and take care of my family earlier, I believe. Sometimes we let a lot of outside influences affect our daily lives. I think anybody does. And one of the best things that I've read, and I would love to attribute it to the person that made it, but I can't think of their name off the top of my head, but was their circle chart. And if you look inside of it, as far as if your family is the one that is suffering or has faced a tragedy, you are the very inner part of that circle. And the people that are on the outer rings are, say, your immediate family, and then the outer ring after that is your friends, and the outer ring after that. And you are not allowed to dump inside any ring, only outside. So depending on what ring you are, tells you, what you can dump as far as your tragedies and or what your worries and your fears or what's upsetting you. If somebody's going through something that's really, really hard, like what we did, it puts an extra burden on that family if you start complaining. And it's not that we don't want to hear about it, but we have so much going on that adding additional stress to a family that suffered a tragedy or has a very sick child, maybe with cancer, or is terminally ill, whenever you start dumping your feelings and your worries and everything, say work or divorce or things like that, on top of that person, it just makes their life a lot more difficult. So I just encourage people to keep that in mind. I mean, we don't want to be excluded, from your life, but maybe just think for a second, say, should I really be sitting here talking about this to this person because, she's got to get back up at the hospital because her child has cancer.
Yeah, before you complain to somebody about your kid's teacher, somebody whose child is dying of terminal illness, before you complain to them about your kid's teacher or whatever, then, maybe think twice.
Yeah, maybe just think, you know what, I'm just going to say some encouraging words today versus negativity,
Well, and I love that visual because it's super helpful. I mean, it's super helpful to those of us who are on the outside of it to think about, okay, where am I in this? Okay. And if you can't dump towards the middle and you need to vent, then you need to vent towards the outside.
Exactly. And it really can apply to anything. If you know somebody that's going through a divorce, or somebody that just lost somebody, or they just lost their job, hey, if you're not in that inner part circle with that person, then dump on the outside.
I love it. That's beautiful and great. Okay, so we've got emilysmallboxes.com. We've got Jude, the Diary of a Baby in a Stroke coming up, and copies available at the Emily's Smile Box event that is on the September 24th. There's a Facebook event. Find Emily's Smile Boxes on Facebook. Get your kids involved. Get your scout troop involved. Get your homeschool group, your church group, your Sunday school group. Do your birthday parties. It's a cool way to get kids involved because they can really, really, really realize that their involvement is helping kids on the outside that need help, and it's a concrete way because it's toys and it's things that I'll see kids at the Smile Box party because they'll they'll want to take some of that stuff home with them sometimes, and but then you're like, no, this is for, and they're like, man, and they make the connection. My 5-year-old makes the connection about what those boxes are for, and that they're going to help kids that are going through a sad time in their lives, and that's where it starts, that's where it starts. So hats off to Emily and you guys for getting it started, and I know that you have really inspired and helped some people today with your words about how to be there for people that are going through this thing, and I am really looking forward to reading. I followed along, and I'm your family member, but I'm gonna really enjoy reading the book because it's so much of it I've forgotten as we've lived through it or whatever. So thank you so much, Jen, and I really, really appreciate you. And I'm going to close out today and give everybody some links about how they can find more information about pediatric stroke awareness and all of that, but we'll let you go get back to your day.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so that was enlightening and fabulous, and I hope informative. Those of you out there, pediatric strokes are a thing. You know, it's something that we all need to realize. Happens to children and to infants, and even to babies in utero, just like it does to adults. And it's something to just have awareness around. There's a Pediatric Stroke Association. There's a World Pediatric Stroke Association. You can get informed and get motivated and find out, how you can spread awareness. Also, we talked about Emily's smile boxes. It's something that I really, really get behind because, my focus is children and families. And when we can get our children involved in our communities, that's where the good stuff is. That's where the juice is. Get your kid involved in your community. Get your kid involved in helping other people. I believe that by being in service to others, that's where we start to transform our lives. When we realize that other people, have it worse and can use our help, and when we start to show up and ask how we can be of service in the universe, that is absolutely, I think, where we need to be, and it's where we need to focus our kids. So I encourage all of the parents out there to, if you're not serving in some capacity, if you're not doing something to make the world a better place and to be of service, I encourage you to start, and I encourage you to get your children involved. It is something that will change your family and their lives for the better, and that is often advice when I have families in crisis that come into my office. It's something that I recommend, that we start by serving. We heal ourselves by healing others, and that is the place where I always suggest that we start. The other thing that I want everybody to really take away from today is that we turn our challenges into opportunities. Turn your challenges into opportunities. Whatever you're struggling with, I have somebody in my life right now that is difficult for me, and my focus is being grateful to that person for helping me learn more about my triggers and learn, how I can kind of shift and transform that relationship. And it's a learning opportunity for me. Why am I struggling with this relationship? Why am I struggling with this person? What needs to be healed in me? So somebody that, is hurtful to me and that, does these behaviors, instead of focusing on that, I'm using that as an opportunity. And I learned that from Jude. I learned about being grateful in the moment and turning challenges into opportunities. He was a beautiful teacher of that for me and my family. And, he felt more like my nephew than my cousin's son because Jennifer and I are so close. And that was, a thing is this, that I believe that Jude was a great spiritual teacher. He was a great spiritual teacher for me and other people around him. And again, it was about turning challenges into opportunities and being grateful in each and every moment that you're in for the littlest, smallest things. Gratitude is, that's where the love of the universe lies, is in gratitude and being thankful, because we, especially in Western society, those of us, that live in Western society are incredibly blessed. And those of us that have healthy children and roofs over our heads and food in our mouths, and we have food security, we are, better off than 90% of the rest of the people out there. And so center yourself in gratitude and for all of the things that you're blessed with. I do want to remind everybody that you can find me at heartlightservices.com. You can find me on Facebook if you search Heartlight Services. These broadcasts are occasionally live broadcast on Facebook. I'll be doing a lot more of those. I'm getting the equipment set up to where I can live broadcast from the office, and I'm looking forward to that. You can also buy the book, Heal Your Feelings, the Indigo Aztec Method, on Amazon, or from the website. I have a little store button. If you buy it on the website, you can get a signed copy if you want one. I don't know why anybody would want my autograph, but if you do, that is a way to get one. I've had a couple of people ask about that. I have a great show for you next week. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I am ironing out the final details and I don't want to get the cart before the horse, but I'm really excited about it. Make sure you tune in tonight to Sterling Day and Melanie Rogers. Their programming is always inspiring and really interesting, and the people that they have on they just have some great guests. So tune in tonight, 8, 9 o'clock Central Standard Time for those shows and check them out. They are wonderful and beautiful ladies, and I'm proud to host on the network with them. Again, this was Sarah Green with Creating Connection, broadcasting live on ClearSource Radio, clearsourceradio.com. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I look forward to hearing from you next week.